Welcome to Govern and Gossip, the channel where we unpack the stories behind the headlines. Like, share and subscribe for more updates and exclusive gossips. Story starts here. What happens when one of the most talked about women in the world walks onto a beloved daytime talk show and turns a friendly interview into an absolute disaster? In just 39 seconds of one single comment, everything falls apart. This is the story of the day. Meghan Markle sat down with Tamron Hall, and what should have been a normal conversation became one of the most shocking moments in talk show history. Tamron Hall has built her career on being warm, welcoming and real with her guests. She's the kind of host who makes people feel comfortable, who asks the hard questions, but does it with grace. Her audience trusts her. They love her. And when Meghan Markle was announced as a guest, people were excited. Here was a chance to hear from someone who'd been in the spotlight for years. Someone with stories to tell. The stage was set. The lights were bright. The audience was ready. Tamron walked out with her signature smile, and the crowd went wild. She introduced her guest, and out came Meghan, waving to the audience, taking her seat across from Tamron. Everything seemed perfect. Tamron started the way she always does, with warmth. Welcome, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Meghan smiled, but it was tight. Thanks for having me. Tamron leaned in, her voice friendly. So, I want to start by talking about your life now. You've been through so much, and I think a lot of people are curious about where you are today, how you're feeling. What's next for you? Meghan nodded slowly. Well, Tamron, I think what people need to understand is that my life has never been easy. People think they know me, but they don't. They see the surface, but they don't see the struggle. The audience was quiet, listening. Tamron nodded. Absolutely, and I think that's something we all can relate to in different ways. Everyone has their own struggles. So tell us, what does a normal day look like for you now? Meghan paused, and there was something in her expression that shifted. A normal day? Tamron, I don't think you understand. There's nothing normal about my life. I wake up every day knowing that millions of people are watching me, judging me, criticizing every single thing I do. Do you know what that feels like? Tamron kept her composure, her smile still there. I can imagine it's incredibly difficult, but I think a lot of people would love to hear how you handle that pressure. How you stay grounded. Meghan leaned back in her chair. Stay grounded. I'm not sure that's even possible when you're constantly being attacked. The media, the press, even people who claim to support you. Everyone wants a piece of you, and no one cares about the cost. The audience shifted. Some nodded in sympathy. Others looked uncomfortable. Tamron could feel the energy changing. I hear you, and I think that's something we should talk about. The media can be incredibly harsh, but you've also used your platform to speak out on issues that matter to you. How do you balance that? Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. Balance, Tamron. With all due respect, I don't think you understand what it's like to be in my position. You sit here in your comfortable studio, asking questions, and then you go home. I live this every single day, every single moment. The audience went silent. Tamron's smile faltered for just a second, but she recovered. I think we all have our own challenges, and I'm here to listen to yours. That's what this conversation is about, helping people understand your perspective. Meghan shook her head. But that's just it. You can't understand. No one can unless they've lived it. And honestly, I'm tired of having to explain myself to people who will never get it. Tamron took a breath. She dealt with difficult interviews before, but this was different. Meghan, I'm not asking you to explain yourself. I'm giving you a space to share your truth. That's what we do here. We listen, we support. Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Support? Where was the support when I needed it most? Where was everyone when I was struggling? When I was at my lowest point? People love to say they support you, but when it really matters, they're nowhere to be found. The audience was uncomfortable now. People glanced at each other. Tamron remained calm, professional. I'm sorry you felt that way, and I hope that today we can create a space where you feel heard. So let's talk about the work you're doing now, the projects you're passionate about. Meghan waved her hand dismissively. Projects? Everyone wants to talk about projects, but what about me as a person? What about my feelings, my pain? Does anyone care about that? Or do they just want to use me for ratings? Tamron's expression tightened. Meghan, that's not what this is about. We invited you here because we genuinely want to hear from you, to give you a platform to speak. No one is using you. Meghan stared at her. Really? Because it feels like that's exactly what's happening right now. You bring me on. You ask me questions that you think will make good television. And then when I don't give you the answers you want, you act like I'm being difficult. The audience gasped. Tamron sat up straighter. I have not said or implied that you're being difficult. I've been nothing but respectful. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Meghan crossed her arms. A conversation? This feels more like an interrogation. And frankly, I'm not interested in playing this game anymore. Tamron's voice was firm. Now, Meghan, this is my show. I've built this space on respect, on honesty, on giving people a chance to be heard. I've done nothing but extend that to you today. If you feel attacked, I'm sorry, but I've been professional and kind from the moment you walked out here. Meghan stood up suddenly. The audience gasped again. Professional kind. You don't know the first thing about kindness. You sit here in your position of power, acting like you're doing me some favor by letting me on your show. Well, I don't need your favors, Tamron. The studio was dead silent. Tamron stood up too, her face serious. Meghan, I think you need to take a moment. This conversation has gone somewhere I didn't expect, and I'm not sure what's happening right now, but I'm not going to be disrespected on my own show. Meghan pointed at her. Disrespected? You want to talk about disrespect? How about inviting me here, and then treating me like I'm just another guest to check off your list? How about acting like my pain doesn't matter? Tamron's voice was steady but strong. I have not done that. I have listened. I have been patient. But you've come onto my show, and you've been hostile from the start. I've tried to give you space to talk, and instead you've attacked me. You've attacked this show, and you've been rude to everyone here. Meghan's face flushed. I'm being honest. If you can't handle honesty, that's your problem. Tamron shook her head. Honesty is one thing. Being disrespectful is another. And I'm not going to stand here and let you continue to disrespect me, my team, or this audience. We welcomed you with open arms, and this is how you respond. Meghan grabbed her purse. You know what? I don't have to sit here and take this. I came here thinking this would be different, but it's the same as everywhere else. Everyone judges me. Everyone questions me, and no one actually cares. Tamron's voice was calm but firm. Meghan, we do care, but caring doesn't mean we let you treat people poorly. If you want to leave, that's your choice, but I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself and for this show. Meghan turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back. You have no idea what it's like to be me, Tamron. You have no idea what I've been through, and you never will. Tamron looked her straight in the eye. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I do know what it's like to work hard, to build something from the ground up, to be a woman in this industry, and to be treated unfairly. I also know what it's like to treat people with respect, even when things get hard. And that's something you seem to have forgotten. Meghan's jaw clenched. I don't have to listen to this. Tamron nodded. You're right. You don't, and I don't have to continue this interview. I think it's best if we end things here. Meghan stared at her for a long moment. The audience was frozen, watching every second. Then Meghan turned and walked off the stage, her heels clicking loudly in the silent studio. Tamron stood there, taking a breath. She looked at the audience, her expression sad but strong. I'm sorry you all had to witness that. This is not how I wanted this to go. We invited Meghan here with open hearts, hoping to have a meaningful conversation. But sometimes things don't go the way we plan. The audience erupted in applause. They stood up clapping for Tamron, supporting her. She smiled, but there was pain in her eyes. Thank you. Thank you for being here with me through that. This show has always been about respect, about truth, about lifting each other up. And that's what we're going to continue to do, no matter what. The applause grew louder. Tamron waved to the crowd, thanking them, and the cameras cut away. But before they did, you could see the determination on Tamron's face. She'd been tested, challenged, attacked on her own show, and she'd stood her ground. She'd remained professional. She'd remained strong, and she'd refused to let anyone disrespect the space she'd worked so hard to build. What started as a simple interview had turned into something much bigger. Meghan had walked onto that stage with her own agenda, her own pain, her own anger. And when Tamron didn't give her what she wanted, when Tamron asked her to be respectful, Meghan couldn't handle it. She lashed out, she attacked, and ultimately she walked away. Tamron had given her every chance. She'd been patient. She'd been kind. She'd tried to create a safe space for conversation. Who the real person of Grace was that day. They'd watched Tamron handle an impossible situation with dignity. They'd watched her stand up for herself without being cruel, without stooping to Meghan's level. They'd watched her protect her show, her team, and her own integrity, even when it would have been easier to just let things slide. That 39 seconds when Meghan had said, "You don't know the first thing about kindness," had been the turning point. That was the moment when the entire studio realized that this wasn't going to end well. That was the moment when Tamron's face had shifted from welcoming to serious. That was the moment when everyone understood that something had to change. And Tamron had made the right call. She'd ended the interview. She'd stood her ground, and she'd shown everyone watching that respect is not optional. No matter who you are, no matter what you've been through, Meghan had come onto that show expecting special treatment. She'd expected Tamron to handle her with kid gloves, to let her say whatever she wanted without pushback. She'd expected to be coddled and catered to. And when that didn't happen, when she was treated like every other guest, with respect, but also with honesty, she couldn't handle it. She'd called Tamron unkind. She'd accused her of using her for ratings. She claimed that no one understood her pain. But the truth was clear to everyone watching. Meghan had been given a gift an opportunity to share her story on a platform that millions of people watch. And she'd thrown it away because she couldn't accept that being heard doesn't mean being agreed with. Being given space to talk doesn't mean being shielded from all questions or expectations of basic decency. Tamron had asked simple questions. She'd been warm, welcoming, and open. And Meghan had responded with hostility, with accusations, with disrespect. There was no justification for it. Pain doesn't give anyone the right to hurt others. Struggle doesn't excuse cruelty. And fame certainly doesn't mean you can treat people however you want. The audience had seen it all. They'd watched Meghan's face change from polite to annoyed to angry. They'd watched her body language shift from open to closed off to aggressive. They'd heard her words go from careful to cutting. And they'd watched Tamron try again and again to bring the conversation back to a good place, only to be met with more hostility. When Meghan had stood up, that was the final straw. She'd made it clear that she had no intention of having a real conversation. She'd made it clear that she saw herself as above the basic rules of respect that everyone else has to follow. She'd made it clear that in her mind, everyone else was the problem, never her. And Tamron had called her on it. Not in a mean way, not in a cruel way, but in an honest way. She'd said what needed to be said. She'd stood up for herself, for her team, for her show, and for the idea that respect matters always. When Meghan had walked off that stage, she'd proven everything Tamron had said. She'd proven that she couldn't handle being held accountable. She'd proven that she expected the world to revolve around her. She'd proven that she saw kindness as weakness and honesty as attack. But Tamron had proven something too. She'd proven that you can be kind and still be strong. You can be understanding and still have boundaries. You can give someone space to share their truth and still expect them to treat you with basic human decency. The audience's standing ovation said it all. They knew what they'd witnessed. They knew that Tamron had done nothing wrong. They knew that she'd been put in an impossible situation and had handled it with more grace than most people could have managed. Tamron had invited Meghan onto her show with good intentions. She'd wanted to have a meaningful conversation. She'd wanted to give Meghan a platform. She'd wanted to help her audience understand a different perspective. But you can't force someone to have a good conversation if they've already decided to be difficult. You can't make someone respect you if they've already decided you're their enemy. And that's what had happened. Meghan had walked onto that stage already defensive, already angry, already looking for a fight. And when Tamron didn't give her one, when Tamron remained professional and kind, Meghan had created one anyway. She twisted Tamron's words. She'd accused her of things she hadn't done. She'd attacked her character, her show, her intentions, and all because Tamron had dared to ask her normal interview questions. Questions that any guest would expect to be asked. Questions that were fair, appropriate, and actually quite gentle, given how combative Meghan had been from the start. But in Meghan's world, any question was too much. Any expectation of civility was too much. Any reminder that she wasn't the only person in the room was too much. She'd come onto that show expecting to be treated like royalty. And when she was treated like a human being, she couldn't handle it. Tamron had remained calm throughout the entire ordeal. Even when Meghan had raised her voice, Tamron had kept her steady. Even when Meghan had made accusations, Tamron had responded with facts. Even when Meghan had been openly rude, Tamron had maintained her professionalism. That takes strength. That takes character. That takes a level of self-control that most people don't have. Tamron could have yelled back. She could have been cruel. She could have embarrassed Meghan in front of the audience, but she didn't. She stayed true to who she is, to what her show represents, and to the values she's built her career on. And when the moment came to end the interview, she did it firmly, but without cruelty. She didn't humiliate Meghan, she didn't drag her. She simply stated the truth, that the conversation was over, that it wasn't productive to continue, and that it was time for Meghan to leave. Meghan had no response to that because there was no response. She'd burned the bridge herself. She'd created the situation that led to her removal, and everyone in that studio knew it. The audience's reaction proved it. They didn't boo Meghan as she walked off, but they didn't support her either. They sat in stunned silence, processing what they just witnessed. And then they gave Tamron the standing ovation she deserved, showing her that they understood, that they appreciated her, and that they respected how she'd handled everything. That moment, that interview, became one of those things that people would talk about for a long time. Not because of what Meghan had said, but because of how Tamron had responded. In a world where people often respond to disrespect with more disrespect, where conflicts escalate and everyone tries to get the last word, Tamron had shown a different way. She'd shown that you can be strong without being mean. You can set boundaries without being cruel. You can stand up for yourself without tearing someone else down. She'd shown that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to engage with someone who's determined to make you the villain in their story. Meghan had wanted Tamron to fight with her. She'd wanted drama. She'd wanted to be able to say that Tamron had attacked her, that she'd been mistreated, that she was the victim once again. But Tamron hadn't given her that. Tamron had remained professional, had stated facts, and had ended the interview when it became clear that nothing productive was going to come from continuing. And that had left Meghan with nothing. No ammunition, no story to tell about how badly she'd been treated, just the reality that she'd been given an opportunity and had squandered it through her own behavior. The contrast between the two women couldn't have been more clear. Tamron, who'd built her career through hard work, integrity, and treating people with respect, and Meghan, who'd been given opportunities and platforms, but seemed unable to appreciate them or use them wisely. Tamron represented grace under pressure. Meghan represented entitlement and anger. Tamron represented what happens when you stay true to your values, even when it's hard. Meghan represented what happens when you let your pain and your ego control your actions. The interview was over, but the impact remained. Everyone who'd been in that studio, everyone who would hear about what happened, would take away a lesson about respect, about boundaries, about how to handle difficult people and difficult situations, about the importance of staying true to herself, even when someone else is trying to drag you down. Tamron had won without trying to win. She'd simply been herself, had done her job, and had refused to be disrespected. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The lights in the studio were still bright. The stage was empty now except for Tamron, and she stood there taking it all in, feeling the support of her audience, knowing that she'd done the right thing. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been pleasant, but it had been necessary. And as the applause finally died down, and the show prepared to move on to the next segment, one thing was absolutely clear. Tamron Hall was still standing, still strong, still true to herself. And no one, no matter who they were or what they'd been through, was going to change.